Lake Como in 24 hours. Hi everyone, I am Noreen from Where to Now, and today we're going to explore Lake Como in 24 hours, so stay tuned. Before we start, I want to give you 3 tips that will for sure let you make the best of your time there. Number 1 is bring comfortable shoes. Despite being able to take the ferry from town to town, you'll sometimes have to walk and hike once you're there. Number 2, bring a foldable jacket. The weather can be tricky in Italy, especially with climate change. We went to Lake Como in mid-May, which is usually the perfect time to visit if you want good weather with smaller crowds. However, this year things were different. We experienced some rain and cold weather. At times, it felt more like November than May. That's when my foldable down jacket came in to save the day. It's so practical when you're in between weathers. And in number 3, always carry an empty water bottle with you. Italy is filled with street water fountains that are safe to drink from. And they are so cool looking. They're so ancient and vintage. And every time I was refilling my water bottle, I was in heaven. The water comes out so cold, you guys. It's the best water you'll get out there. We took the train from Milan to Lake Como. Our train ride was only an hour. We decided to stay overnight in the town of Varenna. We took the train straight from Milano Centrale to Varenna. Our tickets were $16.88 for 2 passengers. Everything in Varenna is relatively close. The train station is right across the ferry dock stop, and even our hotel and favorite restaurants were right across the street. So this is an ideal town to stay at overnight if you're looking for a less touristy destination. I have a complete video and room tour of our stay in Albergo Beretta if you want accommodations in Varenna. I'll link the video above so you can take a look after viewing this guide. We arrived in Varenna at 10:24 a.m., dropped our bags off at our hotel, and headed straight to Bellagio, the first lake town we visited. Our ferry tickets were €18 with 40 cents for 2 passengers. If you read the signs, taking the ferry from town to town is pretty straightforward. There are only 2 main docks in Varenna. They're right next to each other, so there's no way of getting lost. Another alternative to exploring Lake Como is with a taxi boat, a lake tour, or by renting a boat and exploring the lake solo. Today we're taking the ferry from Varenna to Bellagio, exploring Bellagio and having lunch there, then returning to Varenna for a hike and dinner. We'll explore Varenna and make a short stop in Menaggio before heading to Florence tomorrow. We're visiting 3 lake towns in a day and a half. There are so many cute towns surrounding this lake that you should see if you have more time and if your budget allows. Rent a boat, cruise around, and take a day to chillax. Our time is limited in Lake Como, so we are keeping it a local experience and taking the ferry. The ferries are big and comfortable inside and a great way to see the lake on a budget. Our ride was so scenic. Our view looked like a painting that was hung at a museum. It was just so dreamy, just looking outside at the view, so beautiful. Our first stop is Bellagio. Out of all the three towns we visited, Bellagio was the most touristy. Bellagio is where you'll find plenty of shops with cute souvenirs to take back home, scenic, top hill streets, and plenty of opportunities for wine tasting. We're stopping for lunch at Aperitivo at Al. Here you can do wine tasting or a food and wine pairing. We were a bit hungry and decided to do a complete food and wine tasting menu. At first, you start with a cured meats and cheese platter. What makes this experience so great is how well everything pairs together and just the location. We were people watching and having our charcuterie board with some wine. Then came the pasta. The food was okay. If you visit, I recommend wine tasting here and having the charcuterie board. That's where they really shine here because they have a great wine selection and everything, the cheeses, the meats, everything pairs so nicely. After lunch, we decided to walk around and visit the town center. Now here's the shop I love for souvenir shopping. Everything in this shop is made with fresh lavender. It smells so good. It only takes a very tiny little space in your luggage. Another scenic street to walk around is Salita Antonio Mela, and remember to stop at the Basilica of Sant Giacomo. After an afternoon of wandering around, we found another wine tasting shop before returning to Varenna. Enoteca Cava Turraciolo was my favorite. It's in a hidden alley, not a main walking street, and the vibe here is more secluded, intimate, and way more relaxed. We tried a few wines and even got some complimentary bites. But where this wine shop shines is in its interiors. If you decide to sit at a table inside, you'll be eating and drinking inside the wine cellar. Now, I thought that was so cool. Half a day is more than enough time to visit Bellagio. Up next, we're heading back to Varenna. As I mentioned previously, Varenna feels more local than Bellagio. There are also a lot more things to do besides shopping and eating. We decided to take a sunset hike to Castello di Vescio. Remember when I told you to wear comfortable walking shoes? This is why. You want to avoid hiking with slippery shoes here. The hike is also slightly elevated, so bring water to stay hydrated. Guys, the hike is long, but so worth it. Just make sure you bring comfortable shoes because it's very rocky. You're climbing all over. And if you take the hike to the castle, it takes 40 minutes versus 20 if you go in through town. But if you want to see views of Lake Como from above, then I really recommend doing the hike. You'll find plenty of signs along the way guiding you, which was nice because we barely saw anyone else hiking. Usually, the castle is open from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m., but check the website for updated seasonal hours. Another crucial thing to mention is that they have a very strict entry policy if you visit during the late hours. The last entry is 30 minutes before closing time. We did not know this and arrived at 4:40, aiming to be out of there by 5. We thought we could see everything in 20 minutes, but despite that, they did not let us in. So if you want to visit, plan ahead of time and remember to visit at least 30 minutes before closing time. I still, nevertheless, really enjoyed the hike and the fresh air and took the opportunity to photograph Lake Como from a bird's eye point of view. Then down we went in search of views and sunsets. After soaking in the last rays of sun, we headed to dinner at Locanda Cavallino. Locanda Cavallino was highly recommended to us by the manager of the hotel we were staying at, and it did not disappoint. We started with the mixed lake fish starter. Each bite was uniquely seasoned to perfection. On our plate, we had some lake fish pate, smoked trout carpaccio, the traditional marinated fish from the lake, dried and also salted with grilled polenta, so we had it in two different styles. If you like seafood, I highly recommend getting this platter. It was so delicious. We decided on the Parmesan risotto with perisco fish fillets for our main course. And finished off on a sweet note with some tiramisu. Should you stay overnight in Lake Como when visiting or just do a simple day trip? I get asked this question a lot of times, and my answer is simple. If you have the time, then yes. A day trip from Milan to Lake Como is fast, affordable, and easy. The train only takes an hour. A day trip could also work if you're limited on time. I recommend staying overnight because after the mobs of tourists leave, you see Lake Como crowd-free. We got an early start on day 2 and decided to follow the path to the most romantic views in Varenna. After we decided to visit Villa Monastero. The gardens of this villa were stunning, and if you visit between late March and April, you get to see the wisterias in full bloom all over Lake Como, which is simply magical. During peak season, you can also tour inside the villa. The tour is approximately 2.5 hours, and I recommend checking their website for updated hours. If you crave a little espresso or cappuccino while staying in Varenna, I recommend stopping by Al Barriot for a little pick-me-up. While in town, stop by Chiesa San Giorgio. I always love visiting churches when I'm in Italy. They are so beautiful and peaceful. Then we're heading to lunch at Osteria Cuatro Pas. We started off with the grilled octopus and the mixed fish platter. I was obsessed with this platter from the previous night and I had to have it again. I prefer the one from Locanda Cavallino though. Both restaurants are excellent, but I recommend Locanda Cavallino if your time is limited and you can only choose one. They have outdoor seating, another plus, making for a lovely ambiance. Nevertheless, the food is very good at both restaurants. I recommend a complete day minimum if you're wondering how long you should stay in Varenna. There's so much to see and do. It's time to say goodbye to Varenna and visit our last lake town on this blog, Menaggio. Renting a car is unnecessary when visiting Lake Como. If you do rent a car though, you can always bring it on the ferry. We found Menaggio to be relatively small. We walked the entire town and even sat down for drinks in under 3 hours. Out of all 3 towns, Menaggio is less touristy and crowd-free. One of our favorite places to grab drinks and snacks at Menaggio is Enoteca Redi Quadri. Boasting al fresco seating, this bar is in the center of everything and near the ferry stop, making it ideal for a quick stop before catching the ferry. Something I loved about Menaggio was all the parks and public recreational areas. Menaggio is an excellent town for budget longer stays, so if you're planning to spend, let's say, 2 weeks or more and completely disconnect from the world, then Menaggio is a great town to consider. Our stay in Lake Como has come to an end. We had a fantastic time, and it truly is a beautiful lake to visit. We're heading now from Varenna to Milan and from Milan to Florence. If you want to know what we're up to in Florence, remember to subscribe for next week's episode where we explore the best of Tuscany in 4 days. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. It motivates me to continue creating more videos like this. Till next time.